pandemic got us into a reflective space and made us look inward to see what we can do for the world at large. As a self-expression coach, I became a catalyst for women and started Vani, a one-on-one coaching program for women on finding their voice, to speak up, to be visible. As a storyteller, I spotted there were many ordinary people amongst us leading extraordinary lives, making a difference to the world, and they needed to be heard. Thus was born You and I with Rashmi Shetty, where amazing personal journeys with their uniqueness and individuality are showcased. A reaffirmation of the fact, open your eyes wider, the world is far more beautiful when we acknowledge the presence of both you and I. Our guest today is Arundhati Kumar, the founder and the creative force behind a sustainable accessories brand called Beej. Born in a family with mixed parentage, her childhood was deeply influenced by music, art, dance, and books. After 18 years in the corporate sector across industries, as a senior HR professional, a leadership and performance coach, Arundhati started Beej. A self-taught designer, her first brush with accessories happened at her father's leather goods factory, where she would spend her time after school and during most summer vacations. Her journey with sustainability began a few years ago when she started to read more about climate change and global warming and its impacts. What started as a small personal lifestyle change soon became a way of life. And this is what she combined to make it the foundation of Beej. Arundhati has won several awards during her corporate career and was recently part of a UNDP and Government of India program where 35 women entrepreneurs were selected to be mentored to help scale and grow their businesses. As a single mother and someone who did a mid-career pivot at 40, Arundhati believes that her greatest strength and perhaps her biggest weakness too is that she's a dreamer. She sees the world as it can be and not how it is, and that's her energy source. Listen in as Arundhati shares her inspirations, her corporate journey, her start of Beej, and what keeps her continuously motivated. Hi Arundhati, such a pleasure having you on You and I with Rashmi Shetty. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Rashmi. Thank you so much for having me. I still don't understand why people like to have me on podcasts, but thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Lovely to be here.
You'll understand by the end of this conversation why people love to have you. Because every one of us has a little story hidden in the deep corners of our heart. And when we go back in time and look at it, sometimes we understand why we are who we are. So I'm curious to know what little Arundhati was like to the Arundhati Kumar that the world knows you today as.
I think she was always this girl who did not like to fit inside a box. So, I grew up in a family with mixed parentage. My mom was a Bengali, my dad's a Punjabi. I had a brother who was 11 months older than me. Our childhood was a lot about going up with a Bengali helicopter mom. So you had to learn dance, you had to learn music, you had to learn art, you had to swim, you had to come first in studies, everything, all of it. And if you didn't do any of it, she wasn't happy. And my brother was exceptional, exceptionally talented, very intelligent, always again top of his class and things like that. I think always had this pressure of measuring up. And my defense mechanism to it was that I don't care. So I was always about doing my own thing. And I remember through my childhood, my mother would say things like, you always want to go out, you always want to meet boys, your brother doesn't want to do it. And I used to be like, okay. So I think Arundhati was always about, I'm going to do what I'm told not to do. I grew up to be this person who believed that I could do everything. in anything. And I did not necessarily need to conform to what people think is right. I think I got majorly beaten for it when I was growing up as a kid, but it turned out all right. I think it works for me now that I've grown up.
So when it comes to Arundhati as a student, uh, how was Arundhati in school, college? What did you do, and where did you study?
I did most of my schooling in Lamatnia, Kolkata. As a student, I was actually always a good student. Never a very studious student, but good. Always came first, second in class. In 10th standard, I decided to go to boarding school. I was so funny that my ICSE results came, and I had met someone at the club who told me she was going to this great school where there was horse riding and swimming, and I'm like, "What school is this?" And she said, "It's Mayo Girls in Ajmer." And I said, "You know what? I want to go to this school." And I also had a very complicated relationship with my mother, if I could say that. I think I now realize it. I think I was a lot like her. Didn't want to grow up to be like her, but I think I became just like her. So I said, okay, so this is the school I want to go to. So I went and called up, found a number, and at that time, I remember going down to a telephone booth in the locality and calling Mayo girls and asking them, saying, I want to apply. What do I have to do? And they said, you just have to send across your mark sheet. And we take very few students in class 11. And if you make it, we will take you. So again, we didn't have. I remember we had to fax it across. I don't even think we have faxes anymore. So I again took it to the local PCO and faxed my mark sheet across, and I get a call from them a few days later to say, "Hey, listen, we've admitted you, so come with your parents and pay up." And I was like, oh damn, how do I tell them that I've done this? So I got so scared, and then I told my father. I said, I had applied for the school and I've got through and this and that. And my mom, though, she lost it, I think. So I said, I really want to go. Can you please put me in the school and all? And then he took me to Mayo. He said, okay. We went to see the school, and then I got cold feet. I just looked at the school and the campus, and I said, I don't want to do it. I'm so scared. And he said, too bad. You wanted this. Now you got to do it. And that's how Mayo happened for me. And I think one of the best decisions of my life was to go to a boarding school. And I spent 2 years in Mayo. I graduated, came back home. Similarly, I think when I wanted to actually do my graduation, my father said, what do you want to do? I said, psychology. He said, where? I said, Lady Shriram, Delhi. He said, what if you don't get through? I said, I don't know. He said, don't you want to apply to any other colleges in Delhi University? I said, no, I'll apply for only one. So he very sternly told me, he said, I'm not one of those parents who pays donation. So if you don't get through, you have to come back to Calcutta and join a college and start helping with the business. I said, okay, done. So when the results were supposed to come, lists come out in Delhi University, list one, list two. So list one was supposed to come. He actually put me on a flight. I think 5,000 rupees was the admission fees. Gave me 5,000 rupees. And I went and stayed in one neighbor's daughter's house in Delhi. He said, you go to LSR, you see if your name is on the list. If your name is on the list, you pay the fees and come back. If your name is not on the list, here's your flight ticket, you come back and we'll figure it out. And I'm like, oh God, I wish my name is on the list. And I'd applied for psychology honors. That's a hard one to get through in Delhi University, especially LSR. So I went, and that space, Rashmi, everyone's there with their parents. Okay. I think I must have been one out of 500 kids who had come without her parents. First time in Delhi, one girl from Kolkata knew nothing. I went, looked at the list. My name was there. I said, thank God. I paid up. So that's how LSR happened for me. So I graduated from LSR. I did my MBA from Force School. So most of my schooling, my college onwards, has been in Delhi.
You're talking about the best schools in India and you make it seem like it's so simple. You must have been a really good student, Arundhati.
I
Did you
was a
work very hard?
to get such top scores? Because in Delhi universities, you have to get 100% to get admission in the first list.
It was not so bad. It was not so bad 20 years back when I did graduation, but I still think it was about 90% to get through psychology. Um, I had the marks. I was an okay student. But I never studied very hard, but I was an good student. I think it was very. I can say it now, thanks to my mom. I never said it then, but I think we came from a very middle class family, Rashmi. My father's business was just starting off, and me and my brother were born. My mom herself came from a very middle class family, so it was always um, drilled into us that the way to a good life is good education, and you have to study hard. And we were in the best school in Calcutta. We were in La Martiniere, and again, my parents always told us that we may not be able to give you everything you want, but we will spare no expenses to give you guys the best education. So make the best of it. And I think me and my brother were okay. We were good.
Okay. Okay. And post your graduation, what happened?
Post my graduation, so I think my life, it just happened. And now when I think of it, nothing was planned. So finishing MBA, then campus interviews were starting. So I said, okay, we have to sit for campus interviews. And Taj Hotels was in campus interviewing for marketing and sales. And I said, okay. And my specialization in MBA was HR and marketing. So I applied for marketing and sales. They had the first couple of rounds in college. I made it to the next round. So they called, I think, some 10 odd people for personal interviews at the Taj. So obviously the big excitement at that time was going to the Taj, wearing a sari, dressed up, went for interview and all. And I met at that time the head of learning and development, and she used to also head the management training program at the Taj. She met me and they interviewed me, and all of that happened, made us wait, and then came back and she called me and she said, I don't want to offer you a role in marketing, but I want to offer you a role in HR as a management trainee. Will you take it? And I'm like, but I applied for marketing. She said, yeah, but I think you'd be better at HR. I said, okay. I didn't even give it much thought. I said, okay. And I took it. And then went to, we all had to join as management trainees in Mumbai. We all got our postings. We did about, I think, a month of training, and we got our postings. And my first posting was at Lake Palace in Udaipur. I remember we all got called to the corporate office, and we got a letter with our first posting and stuff like that. And all the other 8 HR management trainees along with me had all got Bombay postings, either Taj Mahal or Taj President or the corporate office. And I saw Udaipur and I cried. I said, oh my God, she hates me. She's given me a posting at the back of the Beyond. And I cried and I cried. And then Vijaya, the head of training, she called me and she said, what happened? I said, you posted me in Udaipur. And I remember her telling me that, you don't see it, but I think you're the only one amongst the 8 of them who does not need supervision, who is ready to fly. And that is why we've given you that posting. And I'm like, okay, I never thought of it. That posting changed my life. It changed my worldview. I think everything I went on to do in my corporate world was because Vijaya said those words to me that evening.
Yeah, yeah, powerful words. I'm sure now looking back, you know the weightage of it more than then. Or was it something that really pivoted the way you looked at what life had to offer to you then?
No, she just gave me that confidence that, listen, you're good and you can do anything. So here I was, this 22-year-old kid going to a hotel to manage their HR. And soon after I reached the hotel, there was a bunch of changes at the hotel. The HR head was let go through voluntary retirement and things like that. And I found myself being a part of the hotel management at 22, which was not an exposure any of my peers had, you know. And so very early on, I had this whole taste of responsibility, of taking on things. And I think that really shaped everything I then went on to do.
Okay, Udaipur, the property of Taj in Udaipur is a really beautiful one. I've seen only pictures, I've not visited it, but I've heard so much from people who have visited it. What were your experiences at Taj Udaipur and then on what happened?
I used to go to office by boat every day.
Yeah.
So the executive accommodation, especially for women executives, were right at the back of the hotel. So every morning you just had to walk down a flight of steps, come to the jetty, take a boat, and go to work. Um, Beautiful, beautiful property. I think it cannot be explained in words. But when you work there for a while, it becomes your workplace, right? Um, so, but the good thing is because I started my career at a unit, I used to take an interest in everything, be it front office, be it the kitchens, be it housekeeping, be it the F&B. So I even hosted the New Year's gala at the hotel. So I used to be like, what would I go home and do at 7 o'clock? 7 o'clock, the HR department shuts down. So I used to go wandering around the hotel. All the heads of departments were my friends. I'd go to the kitchen, see what's being ordered. So I think um, I loved that place because it gave me such a sense of freedom. It truly was my hotel. I knew everyone. I used to be a part of everything, and I think that very, very early on in my career built a sense of ownership in me, which I think is so important for anyone who wants to succeed in their career. You've got to be in a place like you own the place, and you do things because you feel they should be done and not because someone is asking you to do it. And that's something I learned at the Taj. So I came back from Lake Palace. I got posted to Taj Mahal in Bombay. I spent a few months. And then my then boyfriend, now ex-husband, was also a hotelier with the Taj, and he was posted at Taj Coromandel, Chennai. So I asked for a transfer to Chennai. That transfer took a little while to come, and being young as you are, brash as you are, I just got impatient and I said, I don't want to do this anymore. And then I joined something. I left them and I went and joined Standard Chartered. And from there on, I moved a couple of times. I did a few things. But yeah, Taj was special.
You never considered going back into hospitality again, Arundhati?
I did, but I think the opportunity never presented itself. So I'm a person who gets very excited by the next big thing that I don't know how to do. I think with me the issue is, or the attraction is about not knowing how to do something and therefore wanting to get into it. So I remember I was working in consulting and I got a call from one of the corporates, and they called me and they said, "Hey, listen, we want you to come and do employee engagement." Employee engagement back in 2004-5 was a very emerging space, not a space
Yes.
like this today. And I'm like, okay, not many people have done it. Okay, I want to do it. I don't know how to do it. So I think my career has always been shaped by people who have offered me roles which I didn't know how to do. It has never been about the money. It has never been about the designation. It has always been, does the job excite me enough to want to do it? And that's what I did for 18 years till I started Beej. I just took up roles that I found exciting.
Okay. So when you came back to Mumbai, you were working with the financial industry. Where were you when you moved back to?
Uh, I joined a company called Cerebrus Consulting. Cerebrus, again, uh, you know, an HR consulting boutique firm run by a lady. Very interesting because at that time, everybody, the whole team were women, fabulous women. So I joined them. I got into that was my first stint at consulting. Um, Again, great. And with every stint, you learn something. I remember when I was there, and we used to do a lot of consulting with, CEOs and head of HRs. We had to go there, present. We used to do a lot of compensation consulting, helping them set up policies and things like that. And that's when my boss told me, she said, you need to start wearing saris because when you go as a consultant, you otherwise look like a kid. I said, okay. And I started wearing saris. And that habit has just stayed ever since. I mostly wear saris, even today. So thanks to Varda, my then boss, She taught me that. And then I did that for a while. Then I joined ICICI Prudential um, for employee engagement. And I used to also work a lot with them in the learning and development space. Um, Most of my HR career actually has been in the learning and development and talent management space. That's, from there I moved to Deutsche Bank, doing almost the same thing. And then again went back to consulting. Did a stint as a head of HR with Conde Nast for a couple of years. Again, a fabulous, fabulous stint because um, all my life I had been in very straight-jacketed, businesses, insurance, financial services, consulting. They're all the same kind, right? And suddenly I'm going and joining this media house where the first time I walk into office, I just get a culture shock looking at what people are wearing to work. And I'm like, how is this even allowed? How are people coming to work like this? So I remember when, I got called. It's so funny when I got called for my interview to Conde Nast. I was meeting Alex, the CEO, and I was like, oh my God, I don't know what to wear. What is someone supposed to wear for a media interview? And I said, okay, safest thing to do is to wear a sari. So I wore a sari, went to give the interview, came back, didn't hear from them for a bit. So I was like, okay, it's not happening. And I was just about to, in fact, sign with another financial services company when the consultant called me back and he said, hey, listen, Arundhati. I said, listen, I'm not taking up that job. I'm joining somewhere else today. He said, no, 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 one second. Tell me, were you wearing a sari at the interview? I said, yes, but why are you asking me? He said, the CEO just called me and he said, I don't remember the name of the girl, but she's wearing a sari. And she's the girl we want. Can you go and meet them tomorrow? And I'm like, okay. And that's how Conde Nast happened for me. And again, I think a pivotal move in my career because that's the space that actually introduced me to the space of fashion, um, luxury, a lot of things. HR, I knew. HR I'd been doing for a long time. But there is so much I learned in that space. It's really expanded my worldview. And I think a lot of the way I look at the world today while I run Beej with actually things I learned at Conde Nast when I was there.
Okay, so it's very clear now that at this moment, when you pause at this point of your life, there are so many aspects of what you picked from each of the places that you went to, stayed in, the jobs that you did. And one very interesting thing that you dropped about yourself is you are excited about the next thing coming, which you don't know what it is, but it's the next big thing you said that is coming. So when you moved into media, understood or tried, were introduced into the world of fashion, uh, from the HR perspective, being completely, was it different? You said it expanded you. What did it make you look at life with, and how did you look at life? Did it change any perception about people or about life itself?
Well, when you've been doing a job a certain way or in a certain amount of number of industries for a long period of time, like I've been doing it for more than a decade by then, uh, you do land up with certain stereotypes in your own head without realizing them, right? So stupid things like people need to come to work like this, people can only talk like that, work can only happen like this. And I realized in Conde Nast, it's a very different world. It was young kids, very creative kids. They work differently. They jam differently. They hustle differently. They brainstorm differently. And sometimes when you do not understand the other side or you do not fully appreciate the process, you find it intimidating. And when you find it intimidating, you start finding it wrong. Like, why are they doing this? They should not be doing that. So I think a lot of that process, either consciously or unconsciously, also happened in my head while I was there, because um, I had a leadership role. My role was a lot to work with, business heads and the CEO himself to kind of shape the culture of the organization. And how do you shape the culture of the organization if you don't understand it yourself or you don't appreciate it yourself? So a lot of that happened, I think it broke down a lot of those unconscious biases that I also had in my own head about how corporate work life should be like. That in that sense, it expanded my worldview, but it also expanded my worldview in a sense. For the longest time, my head, I had this blinkered view. It's only HR, only training, only consulting, only talent management. And HR is also very bucketed in that sense. But suddenly here I was learning fashion. I was learning how a wedding show is put together. I was learning how do you do guest lists. I was learning how do you shoot a video. And that also happened because I spent a lot of time in operations. Just understanding what different functions do and businesses do. And also I had to recruit a lot. So I had to understand roles to tell people what those roles were. And I think that helped me. It just going into an entirely different industry kind of expands your worldview, I think.
That's so true. And in that space of expansion that was happening, you were learning, you were moving, like you said, conscious, unconscious biases were being broken and opening up themselves to you. It was a beautiful self exploratory space that you were in to understand who you were, what were you becoming, and what then led to Beej. I love the name itself. How did the name come about? How was Beej born?
I think Beej was born out of extreme boredom, Rashmi. To be honest, nothing glamorous. But I'll tell you. So after I left Conde Nast, I started working with a company called Leadership Center. Leadership Center is run by this gentleman called Ram. Ram used to be the executive director and group head HR of the ICICI group for the longest time. And then Ram went and set up his own consulting company. And the thing with working with Ram is while you're an employee and while you're a consultant and while you're a practice head, you are also a student. And you will always be a student when you work with Ram because Ram, that's how Ram operates, right? He will sit down, he will make all of us sit. And every time we are talking of a concept of creating a session plan or he'll kind of break it down for all of us and things like that. And I remember one of the sessions that we were planning to ideate on was ambition. There is this definition of ambition, while there are many definitions of ambition, what we believe at the Leadership Center is that ambition is very inherent. It is more intrinsic than external. So he said, you have to ask yourself this question: what's more to me than there is? And that will tell you what your ambition is and where you could be and where you could get. You have to see yourself at another place and you have to see yourself as having more to give. And that sentence somehow just stayed with me. And I'm like, you know what? I have done this for 18 years. What's more to me than there is? Am I always going to be in the HR space? Am I going to be a consultant or, I'm head of HR or a head of HR of a bigger company? I said, I don't want to do this. I have 20 years of my life career left, or 25 years. So that kind of got me thinking. And at a whole other level, I'm a big believer of pauses. So my head operates in this way. When you don't know where you're running, you don't know why you're running, pause, stop, think. So I have taken a lot of career pauses. And every time I take a career pause, I come back and do something entirely different. So I have friends who tell me you're like a cat with 9 lives. I mean, here people are stressing to to leave one job thinking that they'll never find a job again. And you just leave it at the drop of a hat, thinking, I'll figure out. But touch wood, I have always found something bigger and better. So I decided that I'm going to take a pause and figure out what to do. But then the thing with Ram is you can't just tell him, I want to leave Leadership Center. You have to give him a very good reason why. He'll sit you down and he'll say, why, what, have you thought it through? Do you have a plan? Tell me what your plan is. And I'm like, okay, what do I tell him? On the side, sustainability was an interest area for me. Never fashion really. I don't consider myself a hugely fashionable person, but the whole space of sustainability, climate, what's happening with us in the world. Oh, also the fact that, my daughter was very young and I worry supremely about the world and what it's going to be for our kids when they grow up and things like that. So I had somehow decided that I'm going to do something in the sustainability space. But going and telling Ram that wasn't enough. So I had to think of something better. So I said, you know what? I'm going to tell him that my dad has this leather business, and I'm going to change it, and I'm going to do something in the sustainable material space. That was my plan. So I went to him. I told him, I said, Ram, want to do this material space. So he asked me 10 questions. Why, what material? Have you thought it through? What is the plan? How will you do it? And I gave pretty good answers I gave. So he said, okay, I think you've thought it through. I think you will do well. All the best. And I'm like, damn, now I'm stuck. Now I have to do this. So I took a couple of months off. I think that was July. Then I took July and August to kind of think about it. And then September onwards, I started working at Beej. I said, no, this sounds like a good plan. Let's do it. And that's it. I did it.
How did you come up with the name? Because that was an idea that was seeded in your head. How did the name come up? Okay, sustainability. Yes, your dad was in the leather business, all right. You gave him the answers for the questions that Ram asked you, but were those questions the ones that led you to understand what exactly you want to do? Or did you have to delve deep?
No, I actually knew more or less, I think, that I wanted to work in this space. So the name actually, I was very clear that I don't want a westernized name for the brand. That I was very clear about. And no offense, but I don't understand it when Indian brands are called Da Milano. And I'm like, why? Why can't we have an Indian name for an Indian brand? That thing was very clear. And I was very clear that we're building a brand that is made in India for the world. I also knew that I wanted the name to be short. I wanted it to be unisex. I wanted it to be easy to pronounce for people and wanted it to really stand for something. So I actually went and downloaded a Sanskrit dictionary online. And I created a list of some 100 words that I liked because of their meanings, kind of listed them out, saying this means, I don't know, rebirth and blah, blah. Everything that sounded significant to me, I kind of made a list, A to Z. And then we were looking, so some were cut off because they were too feminine, some were cut off because they were too complicated, blah, blah, blah. Then we came down to the short list. And then somehow the word beach stood out because it is the starting point for all forms of life. So whether it's human, animal, plant, the origin of all life is beach. So I said, great, because for us, and that has been the philosophy at Beej, that it's about respect for all life forms. It's about the respect for animals, respect for plants, respect for the planet, respect for the people you work with, people who work for you, with you. So I said, sounds good. So let's do this. And it kind of ticked all the boxes: small, unisex, significant, strong meaning. So I said, Beej it is.
And you always knew that you're going to be an entrepreneur?
No, I think for 20 years, my dad tried to get me to become an entrepreneur, and I kept resisting it. I said, no, 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 I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. To be honest, I don't know what I'm going to do. I never know what I'm going to do the next year. I don't understand it when people have long-term plans ki next year ये करेंगे, फिर उसके बाद ये होगा, then 2 years later we'll buy a house. I want to be that person. I really would want to be that person, but I'm just not. I just know that when I started it, it was so exciting for me. Very soon it's going to be 3 years. We'll finish. It's already been 3 years of us working on this idea. I mean, I started working on it in October 2019. But in Jan 2023, we'll actually finish 3 years of launching the brand. And there's never been a day that I feel like I come to work and I say, I'm bored. I might hate the day. I might hate everything that's happening around it. I might hate the fact that we don't have money and sales are not happening and, thousand other things going wrong. That's an entirely different thing. But I just don't have the time to get bored. And I like that because I'm a person who gets bored very quickly.
This is interesting. Now, here you are, having worked in so many different aspects and areas of HR, then moving into media, understanding a little more about who you can be by the opening up of your biases, becoming aware of it. Then you go on to start a company which is all about sustainability, because sustainability was the seed that you had very strongly sowed in your headspace for your daughter and the future generation. Now, where did that come? And were you always somebody who was very planet friendly, earth friendly, and you knew that this was there at the back of your mind? or was it something that you were not even aware of?
I think it had been there for a while, but it was not about I want to do a business in this space, but I think it was more about how can I consume more consciously. I think it started for me there. For example, we have this little balcony garden in Bombay. And obviously, no luxuries to have big gardens, but I set up drip irrigation in my for my plants. I am very conscious about how much I shop. I shop very little. Things like plastic. I think it started for me there. And somewhere back in probably 2017, 2018, I started reading a lot about what has today snowballed into a catastrophic climate crisis. It was
Yes.
a crisis even back then, but not as bad as it is today. So I used to follow that space, and I, it was a recurring thought in my own head saying, you know, something needs to be done. And really, our kids are going to grow up to see the worst of it. Because by the time they grow up, things we take for granted, like clean water, clean air, all of that are going to become luxuries. So what can I do? What can we do? I think that's how it started. And Beej, honestly, I don't think we're really changing the world doing Beej, to be honest. And after spending 3 years in this business, my whole understanding, my whole worldview of sustainability has also shifted hugely. Right, 3 years back, I think it was a lot more superficial for me, but it was a good starting point for me because I knew I said, these materials are great. These materials have good impact. Bags was a space I understood because of my dad's business. I was never a part of it, but I had grown up with that business, so I kind of understood it. So I said, let me start there. Coming into my own, actually becoming um, vocal about sustainability, actually today becoming someone who advocates a lot of change and things like that are things that have happened to me through the course of my business, actually, because my business has, it's given me opportunities to learn so much more, read so much more, that I think today I can really say that I am a climate, I wouldn't say activist, but someone who's really concerned about the planet and has a informed, educated view on it, which I didn't really have 3 years back.
Because today these conversations make sense, especially you said that it was 2018, 19, and then 20 COVID struck. So, and you had started a business. So, how did you sustain yourself through COVID? And what exactly were your learnings and takeaways from the pandemic?
I can tell you it was incredibly hard. Rashmi, I wish I had ticked a calendar the number of days I cried. There were many. So when we started the business, there was me, there was my partner, and there were three workers. I started the business, the five of us started. We started on January 2020, and I remember 27th, 28th of March, there was lockdown. And two of my boys went home to Bihar and couldn't come back because they thought they were going for 7 days and they never knew the lockdown would get extended, and they got stuck there for 3 months. So in my 1,200 square feet office space, there were three of us. Me in my office, the boys outside at the work floor, Abhijit. So we were as socially distanced as it could be. And a number of times this thought crossed my mind to say, what a bad time to leave a job. I wish I had stayed on. I wish I had done this. Who was buying bags? What was selling? Nothing. So, but I think we focused on building the brand. I focused on telling the story of why we started, where we started. So we actually channeled our energies in a very different way. But that space, or I think just the entrepreneurship as a whole, right? 2020 was hard, but 2021 was also, if not as hard, but hard because we had COVID the first half of the year. Um, it taught me patience. It taught me resilience. So I remember very early on, one of my bosses, again in Deutsche Bank, Shalini. Shalini is a leadership coach herself and writes extensively. I remember speaking to her again and telling her, I don't like this, I don't like this manager, blah, blah, this. And she told me a very pertinent thing. She said, career growths in corporates are not just about individual talent. You could be very talented and what you do, but you also need to have corporate resilience. There will be managers, good and bad. There will be bosses, good and bad. Organizations will go through phases that could be good or bad for your career, but people who show resilience and stay on actually go on to have good careers with an organization. I was never that person. I had no resilience, and I don't think it was about resilience. I think I had no patience. I used to just be like, don't want to do this, not making me happy, want to leave. Suddenly with Beej, I didn't have that option, right? It was not a job. I could resign and say, I don't want to do this. So I learned resilience. I learned that everything is not under your control. I learned that, hey, listen, just because it's taking a little longer doesn't mean it's not going to happen. So I think a lot of good traits that I now have, perhaps in some quantity, have been learned over the last 2 years of running the business. I have learned that just because someone is saying no right now doesn't mean it won't be a yes later. Stay the course, do what you're doing, focus on doing the right thing. So a lot of things which the business has taught me.
Wow, beautiful. Okay, now that you spoke so much about what Beej taught you, can we see what Beej brings to the world? Any products and stories behind those products that you can share?
So Beej, I've been thinking a lot about what Beej is and what Beej embodies. And when we started off the journey, right, my tagline for the business used to be sustainable and stylish. And then after spending 3 years in this business, I now question sustainability in fashion, to be honest. And one of the things that I take great pride on is that I feel Beej is very, very honest and authentic and transparent about its communication, what it does, why it does what it does. And, we're always there saying that this space is about progress over perfection. There are no perfect answers just yet. So I get very upset when brands make claims like 100% eco-friendly, 100% sustainable. And I keep telling my team that anybody who says these things, you should never buy from them because these claims are all wrong. And that's worked for us, Rashmi. So one of the things I think we are known for, honesty, thought leadership. So the brand knows that if Beej is saying something, it is well researched, well thought out, well put out there. And that's helped us. So now we have kind of revised, or I am in my head revising, what we think about Beej to say, hey, listen, human beings are going to consume. They're going to continue to consume. And for the last 3 years, I have been constantly telling people buy less, buy well, use better. I don't think you could win this war by telling people stop buying. What's the next best way to do it? Why can't you teach people how to buy well? Why can't you give them options that are conscious and well thought of? I think that's and then help them see, hey, listen, this one buying decision or this one little choice that you're making, this is the effect it can have. I'm kind of thinking that the whole narrative is about telling people, hey, listen, you can affect what's happening around you. You can affect the climate, you can affect the planet, but everything can be affected by just choosing to make better choices. And, now we are 8 billion of us. If all of us choose to consume responsibly, given the parameters of our income, and all of that, the world could really be a better place. So that's what we do now. Plastic pollution is a big conversation at our studio. So we are always trying to say minimize plastic, minimize plastic. In fact, my boys used to laugh at me earlier saying, ki, pagal ho gayi hai, you can't do this business like this. Now they've all learned staying away from plastic is the DNA for this organization. So we were thinking, what do we do? So we said, hey, listen, why can't we create something that allows people to move away from plastic? So this year, our gifting range, our Diwali gifting range actually has a bunch of stuff that allows people to move away from single-use plastic. So there is this tumbler, which is made out of rice husk. It's reusable and it comes in a cork sleeve, which you can easily hold. So we're saying move away from reusable cups. Why can't you carry your own cup for your tea, for your coffee, all of that? And then comes this bottle, which comes with a bag, which comes with a belt, so you can hang it around you. And we're saying, hey guys, stop. If you want to make one shift, I to tell people, if you want to make one shift, please just carry your own bottle wherever you go. A lot of the bags initially, I think the first 1 year, we had no designer. When we used to reach out to design colleges, they wouldn't entertain us. They would say, send us your job description and we will see. So a lot of the bags in the first 1 year were designed by me. I don't do that anymore, but so all of them remain favorites. Increasingly, how do we help people? How do we just nudge people towards more mindful lifestyles? I think that's at the core of everything we do with Beej.
Wow. Okay. And any story, Arundhati, any anecdote that comes to your mind about after you got on this journey with Beej that reiterated that you're doing it and whatever you're doing is the right thing that you're doing?
I can tell you one from a very recent episode that happened. So for me, Rashmi, Beach has always been about creating a community. I actually use Beach as a space to talk to people about a lot more than just buying bags. Because I feel like you don't come, buy a bag, and then become conscious. You come to us because you're conscious already. And if I can help you on that journey through what I've read, learned, heard, that's really what I want to do. And also the conscious business fraternity in India is still very small, it's growing, but it's very small. And almost all founders know all founders. We all follow each other, encourage each other, push each other, kind of see the kind of work we are doing and stalk each other, if I may say. All of us do that. So there's another podcast where I spoke to earlier this year called Made in India by Monisha. So she gets all these, homegrown brands to come and talk about their journeys. And the format of the podcast is every time she does a podcast, at the end of it, she asks the founder, which other founder and which other brand would you like to see in this podcast? And, they call out. So recently they got in touch with me for their 50th episode and they said we want to bring you back. So I said okay, and then when I kind of was recording with them, Monisha told me, she said, Arundhati, the reason I'm bringing you back is because every time I asked a founder saying who should we bring on the show, they said speak to Arundhati. She said you were the most recommended person on our show, and what is it that you do that your peers are recommending you? And that got me thinking, and I said, you know what, the only thing I do is I share very generously. I share information very generously. Anybody reaches out to me saying, hey, can you help? Can you do this? I said, I'm very, very open to giving out any information that I have that someone else might find useful. Because I really believe that I want to build a community that brings change. That way I went back thinking that, you know what, whatever happens at Beach, I think I have personally achieved something.
This is beautiful. Validation from your peers and from the community is, I think, the best validation that you're doing the right thing and you're on the right track. Amazing, Arundhati. When it comes to sustainability, India's education, as far as the so called educated people we have around us, is really sad. I don't know whether people understand the climate emergency, the climate changes that are happening because of which the entire weather conditions in our country has gone haywire. That people know it starts with them, and at an individual level, everyone can make a difference. So, if I throw open the space here for you to talk about that particular space which you really resonate with, what would you like to see with people altering slightly, which will make a big.
I feel that people do not make a change, not because they don't care. Two reasons. One is if someone tells me, hey, listen, you should shift to a sustainable lifestyle, immediately I start thinking that, oh my God, I need to change too many things about my life. And change is uncomfortable. We all have our comfort zones, we all have busy lives. We are, kids to send to school, jobs to go to. Uh, So anything that requires us to really do too much is not something we want to do. And I think to that I would tell people that, break it down. Sustainability is not about one big shift. It's about hundreds of little things. So choose that little thing which is convenient to you and fits into your lifestyle. Now, that could be anything. That could be carrying a bottle. That could be ensuring that you're reducing plastic. That could be ensuring that every time you go out to buy fruits and vegetables, you're more conscious and not buying something from a supermarket that's wrapped in plastic. And so that's one. I think I will tell people that it's not one big shift. It's not intimidating. It's not scary. And also, it's not a one or 100 thing. So it's not like just because you are doing three things out of 100, you're not good enough. So you should give it up altogether. Do those three. When you're comfortable, make it five. I think that's the first thing. The second thing I would tell is that let's one of the other reasons why someone doesn't do it is because I'm always thinking in my head, what change can I bring? It's too big a problem. मेरे बदलने से कुछ नहीं होगा. If I change my life, it's not going to make any damn difference. So why do it? To that, my answer is again, imagine if all of us are thinking that. I mean, how can a handful of policymakers and a government change life for all of us? There's this brilliant climate scientist called Catherine Hayhoe, and she talks a lot about climate awareness. And she says this, she says, whatever your profession is, whether you're a fisherman, whether you're a stay-at-home mother, whether you're a corporate person, whether you're a vegetable seller, see how the climate is affecting the job you do today. And it's affecting. If I'm a stay-at-home mother, or even if I'm a mother, today, I just put up that post on LinkedIn about how my daughter today struggles to play football because she finds it hard to breathe. It's affecting our health. So should I not be worried? I should be worried. If I'm a fisherman, it's affecting my catch. It's affecting the currents. Should I not be worried? I should be worried. So all of us need to worry about this because it is affecting all our lives. And because it is affecting all our lives, we all need to get up and do something about it.
Yeah, that's so powerful. Simple, but one step at a time makes a big difference. So at this point, three life lessons, Arundhati.
I'd say the first thing, easier said than done, but do what makes you happy. If it's the job you do, then do it. If you want to leave that, do something else, do it. Number two, do not be afraid to start over. When I started my business, Rashmi, it was the worst time to start a business, not just because of COVID. I was just divorced. I was a single mom raising a 7-year-old on my own. My career was the only steady thing I had. And I was 40 and I had 18 years of a career behind me. Starting a business meant giving all of that. I wouldn't say raising it down to the ground, but in a way, you're raising it down to the ground because, when you start a business, you're starting from scratch. You are the peon, you are the proprietor, you are the Xerox girl, you are everything. And, you're starting up from there. And I spoke to a lot of people. I got a lot of advice, and a lot of people said, "Are you crazy? Not a good time. Stabilize your life, so on and so forth." I don't think there's ever a good time. There's never a good time. I mean, is it a good time to have children? Is it a good time to buy a house? Is it a good time to start a job? When you decide you want to do it, it's a good time. And it's not going to be easy. It's never going to be easy. But I don't think there's ever a good time. And the third life lesson, everything comes around. When we started Beej, I remember reaching out to so many people, in the fashion space, people in the media, people in the all of that to say, hey, listen, we're doing this, we're doing that. And so many people who then did not show interest or said no or did so much of that have all come back to us on their own 3 years later to say, hey, listen, guys, you're doing great work, and can we associate with you? Can we write about you? Can we collaborate with you? Um, and I used to be a person who used to take no very personally. 5 years back, for me, a no would be like a rejection. I've learned not to do that. I don't think the no's are personal. And I think if most people started understanding that, we would react to the no very differently. We would react to how the no makes us feel very differently, how we perceive ourselves. Because I used to really beat myself up saying I'm no good, I'm this, I'm that. That has changed. That's definitely something I want to put out there for the listeners. It's never personal.
Authentic, articulate, and vulnerable. These are the reasons you're such a podcast guest favorite. The way you tell a story is so interesting, and you give your perspective, and that sense of ownership makes it that much more beautiful because you have a mind of your own, and the way you articulate your thoughts, put them all together. Arundhati, I'm not at all surprised you are where you are. Honored to have hosted you on You and I with Rashmi Shetty. Thank you so very much for taking time to share your beautiful journey on how you inspire people around you.
Thank you, Rashmi. Thank you for having me. Thank you for listening to me rant from my childhood to my adulthood. I think adulting is hard. No one tells you that. And I honestly feel the last life lesson is we are all winging it all the time. So let's not look at people's social media and LinkedIn profiles and Instagram and think they have got it all together. Most of us are winging it all the time.
Yes, that is true. That is so true. And the important truth of life. So thanks for that as well. And thank you so much. Stay blessed. Continue inspiring.
Thank you, Rashmi. Thank you. Bye bye.
With that, we come to the end of this weekly quest of You and I with Rashmi Shetty. Do let us know if you know people who make the world beautiful. Write in to rashmi.thethirdeye@gmail.com. That is rashmi.thhirdeye@gmail.com. Come, let's explore this amazing world together, both you and I.